Good afternoon. We're here today with Nashville Emotional Wellness Counseling's director, clinical director, owner, and clinician, Jamila Walker. Jamila, do you mind introducing yourself to us today?
Okay, I think Katrica just did it. I'm Jamila Walker. I'm the owner, founder, clinical practice director, and I'm also a therapist here at Nashville Emotional Wellness Counseling. I have been in the field of social work for many, many years, initially working in community health and higher ed, and then going on to get my master's degree and working in private practice. I've worked exclusively in private practice since I graduated in 2013. And in addition to doing clinical work, I also work as an adjunct professor at the University of Tennessee. And so that's a quick of me. I have two children, one partner, a dog that is only half mine. I love to Latin dance. I don't know if these are the answers you're looking for in terms of an introduction,
Okay.
but I love this work. There is not one aspect of it that I am engaged in that I do not love. And I'm thankful to be here, and I appreciate you, Katrica, for taking on the process of doing these clinician interviews. This is really exciting. Looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamila. I really appreciate you being here as well. And I'm going to jump right into our questions because we have so many for you. We want to really get to know you. Okay. All
Excellent.
right. So for me, Jamila, the prominent reason why I wanted to become a therapist is to connect and support individuals on their journey to emotional wholeness. So why are you a therapist and what attracted you to become one?
I think I have a similar why as you, Catrice. I think it probably started out with, me trying to understand my own adverse childhood experiences and get some clarity and understanding around things that I had experienced and been through, and then kind of just moving further along the journey, just realizing that I was not the only one that had experienced these things and needed some support. I saw it as an opportunity to create and nurture some healing for myself, but also to give that to other people. And so from there, it kind of just has blossomed. Part of me starting my own practice, and I know you didn't exactly answer this or ask this, was because I wanted to have a certain level of freedom and flexibility. I wanted to be able to care for my children and my family, and it just kind of has grown from there to be, me doing this for myself, in both regards, and now, me primarily focused on supporting the wellness of others.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And now a follow-up question, it kind of align with the first one. But for me, my own personal experience has shown me the significance of having an individual that creates a space for empathy and just a safety, how that can affect your life. So, what life experiences shaped your perspective and your approach as a therapist?
uh, I kind of want to say like what life experiences have not, and so in work with couples, I draw on my experience in relationships. I have parents and, don't have necessarily the relationship that I want to have with my parents. And so I'm constantly evolving in the work, being a daughter. And so I lend that to clients who are struggling with issues with mothers or fathers or both. As a mom, being able to support clients who are in a lot of different situations as it relates to parenting and raising young people. I just, again, I don't think that there's an experience that I have ever had that hasn't my own trauma and abuse growing up. Some of the pitfalls as well as the um, achievements that I've had, I think all of it lends itself to this work with clients.
Oh, thank you. Just moving right along, okay? So,
Mm.
as an intern, I'm developing my own uh, processes and specific modalities of interest. So what is your practice modality? And can you explain your clinical process before, during, and after a client session?
These are some really good questions, Katrica. I don't think I reviewed this one. So modality, I primarily use CBT, but I would consider myself a very eclectic clinician. So I pull elements of DBT in. For example, I use the TIP, temperature change, intensive exercise, progressive muscle relaxation, pace breathing to help clients to manage emotions. I use a lot of motivational energy or interviewing to encourage clients to change. A lot of my focus is not necessarily religious, but I do bring in what I would call a soulful, intuitive, spiritual aspect. The soulful spiritual is more just around things like, gratitude and forgiveness and acceptance. And the spiritual piece, I would say, is more so just kind of how I show up as a clinician. And so I think that I practice very intuitively. I try to be fully immersed in the space. I want to allow room for, things that are not being said with words to show up and be a part of the conversation that I'm having with clients. And so I would say CBT, with a mix of a lot of other things, bibliotherapy. I use a lot of bibliotherapy, case management stuff, even, just in terms of combining it with solution focus work where I'm helping clients to solve problems by connecting them to resources. But just a conglomerate of different things. And then, like I said, the intuitive piece. And then you asked another part of the question: before, after, during. Can you repeat that for me?
Sure, no problem. So can you explain your clinical process before, during, and after a client session?
Thank you. So before, my process is honestly, like, I'm just doing a lot of personal work. And so, for example, one of the things that I'm studying and learning about now is trust. Ayala Van Zant just came out with a book recently called Trust, and it's looking at the 4 areas of trust. So trust of self, trust of others, trust of life, and trust of God. And so, for me, it is doing my own research and study of topics like that are applicable and important to me, that then
Mhm.
lend themselves to work with clients. So that's the before. The during is that as well, but a lot of just reflection. I'm constantly reflecting, whether in session with clients or outside of session with clients. When I am, listening and just kind of going through life, I'm kind of paying attention to things that I may collect and gather along the way that might be applicable to a specific client. Um, or a specific client. And so, that's a part of the during process. And then after, and I'm going to whittle that down a little bit. And so, recently I had the experience of recognizing that I was experiencing a little bit of burnout. And if you know me and anybody that talks to me, I'll tell them, like, over the years, I just don't experience a lot of burnout. And I'm thankful for that. But I realized that I had been experiencing a little bit of burnout. And so what I've tried to begin to do is be more intentional about creating space between each session, by just doing a releasing activity, by creating space between each day that I'm seeing clients, and then week to week creating space there. So making sure that I'm doing a lot of self-care, and releasing work afterwards. That's kind of the process for me.
Okay, thank you. And really, a lot of those answers kind of led into question number 4, but I'm still going to ask you. So I'm a firm believer that we never stop learning, growing, or simply just evolving into better versions of ourselves. So what work do you do to prepare for sessions? And then also, what do you believe is required to remain an effective therapist?
Good question. So in terms of preparing for sessions, I just again defer back to my previous response and just a lot of, personal work. And so I make sure that I do my prayers and my meditation, and I journal a lot, a ridiculous amount, when I'm on it the way I need to be on it. I try to stay as organized as I possibly can, so the other things that I'm doing in life, the other areas don't bleed into the work that I'm doing with clients. But I would say that that is a big part of what I'm doing. And then did you ask about self-care? You have to forgive me for
No,
like
that's
I grab
okay.
hold to one part of the question and then I'm just like,
You're
okay.
doing wonderful. So
Thank
I was also asking you, what do you believe is necessary to remain an effective therapist in terms of ongoing training?
Yeah, I think doing your own work, one, two, never encouraging or advising a client to do something that you are not doing or willing to do, is huge. I think, committing and devoting yourself to lifelong learning. So whatever that looks like. So for me, one of the biggest things that have helped with the learning piece is becoming an adjunct professor myself, and so being able to stay sharp because I'm around, emerging clinicians and I'm getting this information, I'm delivering it and facilitating it. That has helped as well. And then I think, having a commitment to just ongoing reflection and honesty within yourself. I like to say that, self-reflection is a superpower and self-reflection leads to awareness, personal responsibility to change. And so I feel like as clinicians, if we are constantly in a space of reflection, then we're constantly in a space of awareness and taking ownership and changing whatever it is that we need to change to become better clinicians.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Jamila, we all have a level of innate bias. So, what are some ways that you identify and deal with your own biases when working with clients? And what work do you do to ensure those biases do not affect your client session?
Um, to be honest, Katrica, I don't know that as humans that we're able to completely remove our bias. I think we can constantly be working on it, but just like completely remove it. I remember um completely removing it. I don't know that it's a thing, but I remember when I was in Peace Corps and I was on my way. And what I was telling myself was, I'm not going to go with any expectations. I'm not going to go with any expectations. And what I realized was that it's impossible to suspend expectations and completely in any situation. I think you can minimize them. I think you can manage them, but to completely suspend them, I don't think it's possible. And so I feel a similar way about biases. And so again, I think self-reflection is key. And so it's, you know, having some formal or informal review process of the session that you had with clients, making sure that you're doing a lot of work around your beliefs. I think that a lot of time these biases come because of beliefs and expectations and judgments that we may have that we may not be aware of. And so doing a lot of, personal work around beliefs is important. And yeah, did I answer the question?
Yes, you did. You did. You did a great job. So, you did a wonderful job. So, unless you want to share more about that, pretty good. Okay, awesome. So, Jamila, can you tell me a time when your values were different from a client's active goals or efforts to achieve self-determination? And were you able to help the client? If not, is there anything that you could have done differently?
Hmm. A time where my values were different and helping a client achieve the goals or not. So I'm thinking of one particular client who I saw long term off and on for probably about 6 years. She started off with some addiction issues that she wasn't able to acknowledge were addiction issues. And in the end, she was. and she was able to stop using for a period of time. And by the time we saw each other last, she was using again and had kind of spiraled and had gone out of control. But I think that for me, it's, constantly turning the mirror to the client. And so, just thinking about values. And so my value is that, if you use substances, then you're potentially going to, spiral out of control. And so don't use substances. And the client's value was, this is what I need to cope. And so being able to kind of reflect back to the client, like the benefits and the detriments of the behavior that they're using, being able to hold space and suspend judgment for whatever it is that's going on with them is an effective tool. This client, I don't like to say that I wasn't able to help her. I think that that's relative. I think in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. But I think at the end of the day, as therapists, like, we're not here to save people, help them, yes, ish. But more than anything, we're here to support them on and walk with them on their journey. And so for me, I can't say that, there aren't successes based on the way that I approach or my perspective on what it is that I'm doing in this situation. Yeah.
That was okay. That's a great example. Really, really good. Okay, so more probably now more than ever, the field of mental health has expanded, especially in the media. So I feel that a lot of mental health challenges are rooted in our disconnectedness from each other. So what do you consider to be the leading causes of mental health issues today?
Um, Environmental stressors, so whether it's that we are overworked or that we live in a society that prioritizes and values image over, real authenticity. I think that, our values have dramatically changed, and a lot of things that in the past were not as permissive have become permissive in some ways to our detriment. I think an unwillingness to have difficult conversations is a part of it, or to acknowledge truths and dilute reality. Um, I mean, I honestly, I could go on and on about what I feel like some of the leading causes are. Of course, COVID is a huge environmental stressor. I think poverty is a huge environmental stressor. I think racism, again, I could go on and on and on about some of the causes of mental health, but those are a few.
Oh, those are great answers. Really, really good. Jamila,
What
can
about
you
you?
tell
Let
me
me turn it on you. Let me turn it
about,
on you. What do you think are some of the causes of our mental health challenges?
really so many things that you already talked about? Just us, social media, Facebook, Instagram. We just have so many mediums that we want to project. Hey, this is what I'm living my best life today, but
Mm.
really I'm crying over in the corner. I'm really hurting. And then also, I feel like our environment has become so inflamed that we no longer hear each other. We're divided along political lines or ideology lines. So, we're no longer willing to really reach out and to preserve our relationship. It's kind of just cancel. I'm finished with that person. So
Mm.
I think those things and just, wanting to preserve that relationship to reach past that point of conflict.
I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And Jamila, can you tell me about a time when you faced an ethical dilemma in session with a client? And were there any decision-making tools that you used to arrive at an effective conclusion?
Um, an ethical dilemma in a situation with a client. So I will say I'm thinking about a couple of different scenarios. One that I think I'll touch on, because I think that it's important. One is, the use of social media. And so, we are in a time where, we're on all of these different platforms, and it's not uncommon at all for us to see a client on a platform, or for a client to friend request us on a platform. Um, and so I have had situations where clients have friend requested me on platforms, and I've either, ignored or declined those requests. And so my decision making around that is just thinking about the impact of a client being able to see me completely in a personal space, things that might be triggering for them, things that they may not understand based on limited amount of context on social media platforms, and potentially these things being detrimental to our working relationship. And so, I think about one of our ethics in our social work code of ethics is first do no harm. And so if there is something that would be more harmful than good, straying away from it. And so that I think that's a fair example of an ethical dilemma being, do I or do I not have, allow for my clients to be friends on like Facebook, and then leaning on our code of ethics, which I feel like we can kind of go back to regularly. That's what it's there for, to help us to make decisions as it relates to ethical dilemmas.
Exactly. Awesome. Awesome. And so the next question is going to be in a little different direction, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But for me, if I were completely just, if the social work field didn't exist, or in any capacity, I would probably be a world traveler who just blogs and about my encounters with other people, other cultures, their lives and experiences. So if you were not a social worker in any capacity of mental health, or any field of that matter, what would you be and why?
So three things come to mind. The first one is a writer. And so I, remember being 10, 11, 12 years old, keeping journals, writing stories, um, and really loving to write, and still love to write. Journaling gives me life. And so probably a writer, one, two, a dancer. I love to dance. I, since COVID, have done a tremendously less amount of dancing, but I love to dance socially, Latin dance. And I probably would have, all things considered, a professional career as a dancer. And then three, I think probably some sort of investor. I'm thinking real estate investment. I love looking at houses. I love, the process of a house being renovated and rehabbed, going from, bones to beauty, so to speak. So I would think one of those three things I would be, if not doing all of them, I would likely find a way to do them all. So,
Awesome. That
yeah.
sounds awesome. So, Jamila, those are actually all our questions. So I thank you for being here. But before I leave, was there anything else that I did not ask you that you wish I had?
Um, No, I think you got it all. These were great questions, Katrica. Really, really great questions. How did you feel about the questions and the
I
responses?
felt
Did
really,
you get the information that you wanted to get?
yeah, I felt really good about the questions, and especially the responses. Kind of, I say surprised me, but in a good way, in the way that I felt that people were authentic and they just really, really gave them themselves to answer these questions.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for having me and hosting this conversation.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day. Thank you.